And as communicators, we divide audience between primary and secondary. And the reason is because your primary audience, let's go back to the objective. Your primary audience is the people who you want to do the thing. Whatever your objective is, your primary audience are those people. And those are the people you need to meet or need to reach. But there's also oftentimes a secondary audience, and you need to list those too. I'll know that with this, we're going to say employees at, say it's just at people leaders. So my primary audience is just people leaders. But the secondary audience who we need to be aware of everything is maybe at senior executive level, because they have something important that they have a role to play, even though they aren't the people that you're specifically targeting for the action. Or a secondary audience could be, who knows, maybe it's a supplier. Maybe, we're making this change inside an organization, but there's a connection to an external supplier, and they need to be part of your thinking when you're putting together your communication plan. So they're not the doers, they're not the people who you have the objective connected to, but they're still important and they need to be considered as you're completing your plan. And so that's what your secondary audience is for.
Yeah, I think another thing to consider too, with the HR projects that I've worked on, is that sometimes your secondary audience is HR. Right.
Yeah.
So it could be like, let's say you're rolling out some sort of, I don't know, enhancement to a system or something. And sure, people leaders might need to use that system. And that's a bit of a change, whatever that change is. But it's also a change for your talent acquisition team or your comp team. Or so depending on how that's all structured, I think that's an important element. Like, don't forget the people inside who are actually going through possibly a change in their process or their systems or something.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And in some cases, those people might also be a primary audience.
Absolutely.
You might be communicating with them differently, and that might be required. Again, what's your objective? But yeah, you're totally right. It's not just the people who are there at the other end. Yeah, good point.
Would it be fair to also say, because we're talking so much about HR, so I want to make sure that that we're speaking to you, like who are actually doing the work and in the system. HR business partners are really popular in, especially larger organizations, but they could also be an audience if they have to do something with that information. And I don't want to overcomplicate. I know we're only on, slide or section 2, but I think it's important, right? Like, so again, like, I know I'm saying this over and over again, but like, don't forget the people inside HR, because I think sometimes we do forget that, and they play such an important role. Like, business partners play such an important role to sometimes communicating, being that link to your people leaders, or being those links to senior leaders.
And to the point that we're only on point 2 of 7. If I am engaged to write a communication plan, I'm setting a day. Aside to do
yes,
a communication
absolutely.
plan. You're not doing it in 15 minutes, because it's a lot of thinking. Clearly Faye and I have not scripted this episode. So as we're doing this back and forth, we're imagining creating a plan and going, oh yeah, we have to remember the HR people. Oh yeah, we have to remember these people, because even though that's not the majority of the piece that's happening, it's an important element. So we need to remember them too. And that's communication planning, is a lot of that, asking those questions of yourself as you're going through and creating an actual document. It's not something that exists virtually. It's an actual document. It's called a communication plan. And you've got to build it using these 7 sections that we're describing today. So it takes time.
Yeah, it does. No, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.